Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review, album review, Off, self-titled. This is a California punk band featuring vocalist Keith Morris, best known for his roles in the bands Black Flag and Circle Jerks. I reviewed Off's first release a few years ago, First 4 EPs, which sits proudly in my collection and was definitely one of my favorite releases of 2010. Gave it a glowing review. But this project has a bit of a catch to it. Not only is it punk music, but it's an intentional throwback to Keith Morris's days in the earliest years of Black Flag, specifically, around the Nervous Breakdown EP time. And everything from the riffs to the vocal style to the cover art to even the band's name points in reference to that point in Keith's career. And first impressions on this LP, Off is definitely keeping things raw. It feels and sounds like they recorded this album in half the time they recorded the first 4 EPs. Sometimes Keith's vocals hardly even sound EQ'd. On a few tracks here, they are so much louder than everything else that when Keith screams, everything is just drowned out. Sometimes the drums are really buried too. I can hardly make out what they're doing. The guitars feel kind of muddy here and there, just from time to time, but the energy is still behind these songs. They're still performed with a lot of intensity. Those somewhat thrashy California skate punk riffs are still there. They're still all over this record. But the overall package is definitely not as bright or as crisp as it was on First 4 EPs. It's a very claustrophobic album. There's not a lot of space between the instruments in this mix. Some things drown out other things, but it kind of has this very overwhelming charm to it at some points, I guess. And yeah, maybe I am being a little nitpicky about the sound of this album, but to me, it kind of ruins the momentum of these songs to not hear the drums and the bass really shoving the tempo along like they should. On this LP, Off sometimes we'll deliver tracks that feel like slight variations of ideas that were on the first 4 EPs, like the intro track, Wiped Out, which is this rock and roll riff that is sped up to a punk rock fury. Or on the song Cracked, actually this happens on a lot of songs where the drums, the bass and guitar riffs, and Keith's vocals will all kind of syncopate in unison. Off is one of the few punk bands to use this technique as much as they do, and sometimes I guess even though it does kind of bring them a distinct flavor, I do feel like they can be a little heavy-handed with it sometimes. With his vocals, Keith will come through with a really snarky and personal message that is so just nasty and focused, but vague in some ways. I'm just dying to know who or what he is singing about. Like on the track I Got News for You, where he directly addresses someone who thinks they're the king of the scene. Of course, Keith has tracks that have a really strong political message behind them too, like Borrow and Bomb or Toxic Box. And sometimes he'll throw in a bit of very dark humor into the song too, like on Vaporized. Punk may not be your thing. You may think punk is dead. You may think that this album does not add anything wildly original to the world of punk, but you do have to admit that over the years, Keith really has maintained his charisma. Musically, I feel like Off tries a bit to be less one-dimensional this time around. Keith has some points where his vocals are narrated or he's singing a little bit. These can be kind of hit or miss for me, especially when I don't feel like his vocal is mixed all that well. But I do appreciate the variation. There is a really nice slow building guitar intro on the track King Kong Brigade, and I like the hard dissonant chord hits in the middle of Jet Black Girls that really kind of breaks the song up and adds some really ugly colors to the mixture. This album does not really wear its welcome, and it's difficult to pull tracks out at first when listening to this, because it's all just this flurry of varying degrees of just intensity for 16 tracks that run roughly 16 minutes. The style of this album is so close to the blueprint of the first 4 EPs that if you missed the first 4 EPs and check this out, you will probably like it, maybe even love it, and think it's one of the most badass punk LPs you've heard in a while. But if you really loved first 4 EPs like I did, it may be easy to like this, but maybe difficult to love it. Mostly because this is so similar, it's impossible for it to make the same shocking impact that this sound first did when first 4 EPs came out. There may be some mixing issues on this LP for me, but the tunes on here are good, and I think Keith's vocals are still great. Kind of feeling a decent to strong 7 on this thing. What did you guys think of it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Why? What should I review next? And thanks for being awesome. Love you. See you later. Bye. Forever.